So guys, hello, have a very good morning. I'm very happy to see you all here. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about the EVM, so both the EVM itself and also a little bit about its ecosystem. So we have these two very nice invitees here. So please guys, present yourselves so that we can start.
Thank you, Rony. So I am Jaime Varela. I am from ChainSafe. We are a research and development firm. We are the people behind Web3.js, Lodestar, among other public goods. Also, we provide infrastructure, interoperability infrastructure and Web3 gaming products.
Hey guys, I'm Bruno. I would like to thank Antonio and everyone for having me here today. Super excited to share this talk with you guys today. I'm from Cartesi. Cartesi is actually a modular execution layer. We are expanding the design space on Ethereum, on EVM, I would say, ecosystem, and allowing developers to do more Web3. And we can talk more about that along the panel, but I'm super excited to be here today with you guys.
Perfect, thank you guys. So let's start. We saw, since the EVM was incited back then by Vitalik and Gavy Wood, so a lot of years ago in crypto at least, right? We saw that it gained a lot of momentum, right? We saw first, of course, only Ethereum using the EVM, but also new chains aggregating. Now we have lots of rollups, layer 2s. So nowadays we have more than 50 rollups and layer 2s using Ethereum. And of course, the EVM evolved in those years, right? So we have the merge, for example, in 2022. We have the Sepala fork, we have Dencun fork, which we just talked about. And we have both changes in the EVM as an infrastructure with new opcodes, for example, and also new options of development in the chain. But we also have some new challenges that we need to overcome, right? So for example, now that we have more than 50 chains, how can we do to interoperate all those solutions, right? I mean, I have some ETH on Arbitrum, but I need to use it on Base, or I don't know, I want to deploy some contract on ZK Sync, but I don't have ETH there. How can we integrate all of those chains, solve this problem, and of course, also keep the price in a reasonable range, right? We don't want to pay like 10 ETH for each transaction that we do. So how do ChainSafe and how do you guys work in order to solve these issues?
Yeah, so we are seeing solutions that bring other challenges as well, right? So we have modularity, but modularity brings fragmented liquidity. So what do we do with it? At ChainSafe, we have built Sigma, for example. It's one solution we address for interconnect this liquidity. And we, building over our experience with Web3.js and Web3 Unity, we have seen that one of the biggest challenges currently is in the UX that developers have by building on top of these tools. So if we have a lot of bridges, we have a lot of security issues, we must provide the tools that are very easy for even not Web3 developers to build on. That's basically where ChainSafe has put efforts in, for example.
No, that's perfect. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, I think to answer that, we could get a step back and maybe give a more broader perspective to the audience on why those problems happen, right? If Ethereum a while ago embraced as a roadmap, as a technology path to evolve and be capable to be the real world's computer, it's embraced that path where it's in the scalability roadmap, it embraced in the base layer its fundamental property, which is the decentralization of trust, which is a hell of a problem to solve by itself. And that allowed Ethereum to outsource to other ecosystem members part of the infrastructure that will scale, and together we'll be able to address real-life problems, right? Because we only reach mainstream, as we all want to do, if we start addressing, I would say, regular people problems in life, right? So when you do that, you have this fragmentation that Jaime mentioned, right? You have those challenges and modularity, right? You get specialization, you have modular execution layers, you have data availabilities, and you have chains starting to stack in a horizontal and in completely different, I would say, architectures. And that brings problems for developers because, as mentioned on the previous, I would say, panel here, it's complicated to developers to figure out what exactly to use. So, of course, we need to solve that convenience. The UX for developers must be addressed. But also, it poses challenges on composability itself, right? And I would say that composability, as we have in the base layer, might be overrated. Right? We don't need exactly that perfect composability that I have in Ethereum for every single use case, but we do most probably require composability on the liquidity, access to capital, right? And solving that, it's already a challenge by itself. Right? We have some, I would say, promising initiatives with what we call sequencers, right? Decentralized sequencers, or with initial promising technology that initiated by Polygon, but it's not a Polygon project, it's a neutral project called aggregation layer, right? So those are the technologies that will bring and allow different execution layers, different L2s with different architectures, scale what needs to be scaled, meaning scale computation, scale the design space for developers to do more in Web3, while keeping the fundamental properties of trust security of the Ethereum base layer and access to this wide range of capital that is available on that ecosystem, right? If you mix those things, then you start unlocking in this modular layer more use case than we have nowadays.
That's perfect. You mentioned the Polygon aggregation layer, right? So we have nowadays multiple solutions to at least they're trying to give a solution to this problem. And I'd like to know for you guys, which ones are the ones that you're most bullish on, or the one that you most believe that you think will be the next future of the EVM ecosystem?
Well, personally, I'm really excited about the rollup as a service, for example, on which you can easily one-click and deploy a new blockchain. That's really bullish. I mean, it's really very new, and we are just seeing the early times of new developments being made with such easy-to-use tools for the builders. Another very exciting thing I think Jaime has been working on, for example, is the account and wallet transaction. We are doing something else also regarding on blockchain transaction is, for example, on gaming. It doesn't matter on which chain you're going to deploy on. With our tools, for example, you could easily access all liquidity across chains, across even substrate, even Bitcoin liquidity we are enabling now. So, yeah, those two mainly, the easier to use routes as services, and the other one regarding the blockchain abstraction tools we're building.
Perfect. And I also have a question for you. As you see, we have rollup as a service. It's really easy to set up a new rollup nowadays, a new layer 2. And we see a lot of new ones. As I said, we have 50 layer 2s now in the Ethereum EVM ecosystem, and we will have more 20 in the next months. So how are the risks being assessed in this market? How do you guys think? Like, we also had a lot of hacks in bridges, right? So 70% of the hacks of the last 2 years in crypto were in bridges. So this is definitely a big issue, definitely something important for us developers to take care. So how do you guys see this developing in the next years, and how can we solve this issue?
Yeah, that's why I started the panel highlighting the fundamental property of decentralization of trust. The fundamental, I would say, ethos of blockchain is the disintermediation, right? So to do that, the network itself assumes the role of the intermediator, right? It's the network that will guarantee the consensus among the stakeholders and make the transactions progress. So if you lose security, you end up with nothing, right? That's why modularity and all this composability that we are talking and reading a lot is much easier said than actually done, right? I think this year and the next year, we will see fundamental progress on that and increasing safety on this. because it's the only property that we cannot, I would say, give away in terms of blockchain. And that together should come exactly with the convenience, right? Take an example, Cartesi, we offer a convenience layer for developers to launch the app chains or application specifically rollups using a VM that boots an entire Linux, right? And in a very convenient way for few clicks of a button. So our project is an infrastructure project. We are aiming to solve the complications on developers level. We are aiming to solve the friction on developers level. But of course, we still have one level of more friction, which is regular users, how they will access and use applications, right? And then you have all account abstractions, how to onboard wallets, how to keep the wallet safe, how to protect users and how to preserve identity, and etc. So there are two levels of frictions that's separating us for a more, I would say, robust and compelling mass adoption, right? But I'm super excited. And answering your question about what I'm bullish on the composability and I would say integration, I would say aggregation layers is starting. So I think we need to give more time for that concept to land properly. I would say shared sequencers are in a more advanced stage. For example, with Espresso sequencer, which is a project that we close collaborate. So yes, shared sequencer maybe will come first and start allowing different layers to interconnect in what it matters, especially liquidity, right? And while these different layers will serve for different purpose on developers, on creating applications. Those applications, they have different verticals, different requirements. Is expected to each vertical or use case have a separate need. And we need to abstract that from the developers, from the users. We are still talking about technology here. We're not selling solution yet. So we are super early stage in blockchain technology, right? Still some progress to reach the level that we're still talking about solutions and abstracting away all the protocol stack that is below. Right?
Yeah, that's a perfect point. I mean, when we use the bank nowadays, we're not interested in how our transaction goes to Bradesco servers and then to Banco Central servers. That doesn't matter for us, right? We just want to use it in order to get the money from place A to place B. So as I understood from what you said, we need to do that also with blockchains, right? We need to abstract all of this complexity from the end user. So at least in my opinion, the end game is for my grandma to use blockchain, right? For her to log in, of course, not in Ethereum layer room because it's expensive.
I would say the end game is people even don't know they're using blockchain, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's why we should be aware of that in your solution. Nobody knows what Instagram used to offer your service, right? So that is the end game. And for developers, they should have a friendly environment where they can use all the tools available, and that's the problem to bridge Web 2 developers to Web 3 world, right? The Solidity, EVM, it's quite limited in what you can do, and that's a beautiful thing that Ethereum did. They say, you know what? You can deploy non-EVM execution layer on us. We will all be in the same ecosystem. I'm embracing my role here as an Ethereum. I offer you security. Your role is to expand what is possible to be done in blockchain and offer to developers the easiest path to jump and start building applications, right?
I think the way to achieve that people doesn't take into account which stack is used behind the tools they're using is to provide the same logic but to developers. For example, in Web3, developers can code on TypeScript, on JavaScript, code that actually connects to the blockchain really easily. There's no need to learn new language. There's no need to be an expert in Solidity. So that's the way to do it. Like apply the same logic, but for developers.
I couldn't agree more, right? And for example, having a VM that boots an entire Linux is a very nice way to expand that. There was a hackathon that a lady, she just implemented ChatGPT inside our VM and start doing fully verifiable ChatGPT applications, right? And this on top of Ethereum. So yeah, it's happening now. We are planting the seeds of the infrastructures that will allow us to achieve mass adoption. We are not there yet, but we see clear progress on that. So I'm super excited. It's a great time to be in the industry, I would say.
Definitely is. So I want to explore two topics that you guys mentioned. Actually, one that you mentioned and one that I'm curious to know more about. So you mentioned about account abstraction, right? Which may be a shift in paradigm for the whole EVM ecosystem, right? So nowadays, if you lose your private keys, if you lose your seed phrase, you lose the access to all your funds, right? So if you stop to think about it, my grandma would never use this kind of bank or this kind of transaction meter, right? And most of the users, if we want to get so mainstream adoption, we need to change this, right? And account abstraction, of course, is one of the ways to solve this. But I also have another point that I also want you guys to talk about, which is mobile, right? We don't see a lot. I mean, Solana has a little bit of a footstep there with Solana Saga and some other initiatives, but I don't see a lot in the EVM ecosystem related to mobile. I'd like to know also, so first talk about a little bit about account abstraction, but also if you guys know some initiative related to mobile, because in order to onboard billions of people, we need to have some support for mobile. Like we rarely use computers nowadays. I mean, we still use it, but we don't use as often as our cell phones. So we need to have dApps made for cell phones. We need to have, anyway, I'll let you guys talk, but please comment about those two topics.
Well, I'm gonna start with the latter. So mobile, wow, that's so just like the big white elephant in the room in every crypto conference. For example, in gaming, 80% of the industry, an industry bigger than movies and music joint, is on mobile. And it's always a big challenge. Like, how can we break this platform power that Apple and Android have and let us do crypto on mobile? Because if someone here had the experience to deploy an app for iPhone, a crypto app, you know, it's terrible. So I think, yeah, the Solana phone, for example, yeah, it's one way to try to break this issue. But definitely, we go back into what's the greater issue here is that we keep being very separate from the TradFi, from the traditional industries. We still are like the Web3 space, and we even talk about it, like Web3, Web2. I mean, there should be a difference there. There should be a difference between real-world assets, between the crypto assets. If we try to address real-world problems with crypto solutions, eventually the phone builders, platform providers, they're going to be embracing the tech. So let's stop being so divisive is the message I think we have, and start embracing traditional tools and start talking with Apple, with these traditional industry players.
Yeah, I think history has this crazy behavior to repeat itself, right? So what we're seeing in the blockchain industry right now is not a novel thing. It's tech fragmentation. We saw that. Maybe I will give away my age right now, but in my early days in telecom, before joining blockchain 2018, back to the early days of first G, second G, you saw this huge fragmentation on technology, right? That's why the European Union back then came with the GSM protocol standard, which is it means the global system for mobile communication that allowed vendors, manufacturers, phone manufacturers, equipment manufacturers reach scale because they have and they set a combined set of standards on how those things should work. Right? So all those things that we are seeing in blockchain right now, there will be a moment that we need to start standardizing things. Right? That's what will allow, for example, any phone manufacturer start building inbuilt security applications to sign into the blockchain without knowing exactly which blockchain or which signature model or what is the protocol that I'm implementing here. If we don't solve this problem, standardization in certain aspects across the board, it will be very difficult to reach scale on certain equipment, right, including phones. And the application adoption in the phones, it's of course, it's the phone adoption for mobile is for blockchain industry. I would say that it's a whole day topic, right? It's not a single panel. You have the difficulties on launching application on the hosting pages of iTunes and Google. You have difficulties on how you sign and preserve your identity in the phone. You have different on the complications of lack of standards. So many problems that you need to solve. And of course, that brings together issues with UX for developers. Right? So I would say that the main driving factor here should be part of standardization of specifically key things that involve phones, and that will be more compelling to deploy at scale. Right? Otherwise, you keep sending niche solution, which is a Solana phone. Right? Solana phone is an attempt of Solana to show a POC to the world industry that they can become a standard, right? And if they become a standard, then you have billions of phones coming after, right? So that's the role on Solana phone.
Perfect. And so we're starting to get out of time, so let us rush a little bit. I'd like to discuss what, in your opinion, are the most exciting and promises technologies for the EVM ecosystem in the next years, but also I'd like to just, meanwhile, I'll give you some time to think. I will tell about the last update that we have, the Dencun fork, which was mentioned on the last panel. It happened on March this year, and we saw that the fees for the layer 2 dropped by a huge amount, right? So now, at least using layer 2 is the same price as using Solana, as using other solutions that we have in the market. So in my opinion, it's a past event, but I think this is huge for scalability in Ethereum, right? So I would choose this innovation. I'd like to hear from you guys.
You made a perfect start here. I would say that I'm most excited with the fact that we're finally unlocking the roadblocks that we have in blockchain to really enable new use cases to flourish, right? Computation scalability, what is that? Is the capacity to execute sophisticated codes in the blockchain, right? The base layer is really limited in the complexity that you can run that. So all this scalability, all this modularity approach that unlock you more computation. Together with that, you have scale on data capacity, right? What we call data availability. So once you scale computation, you scale data capacity, you're really truly unblocking what we call in Cartesi the cone of innovation. So I'm very excited to see new use case coming because of the release of those restraints, right?
Yeah, following up with what he's saying, what's the main driver of development on GPUs? It's not AI. Before AI, it's video games. So video games is absolutely a really good use case to, for example, launch a whole game on top of a new rollup using these rollups as a service, one click and you go. Then we can continue to explore new use cases, such as what if we launch a whole LLM, a whole AI chatbot in a blockchain. That really excites me because one of the big issues we are seeing as a society is, hey, these big AIs, how they're going to control everything, how they're going to have so much power. What if we start competing with them with decentralized AI applications? I think that's something that really excites me. And another thing, just to finish, definitely want to double click on the wallet abstraction, on blockchain abstraction. Then we're not going to know, developer is not going to need to decide on which blockchain he wants to launch. It doesn't matter. He could use any of the tools, for example, Sigma, ChainSafe tool to deploy any blockchain, access liquidity. Those are the things that really things where the market's moving.
Perfect. So you also mentioned a counter abstraction and AI, right? So I also have an idea that AI may help more developers than users, right? So in order to create a application, I mean, we have low code, no code already today, so we don't even need it. But I think that for complex applications, which is, I mean, we need to find a killer app in crypto right now, right? Like Excel was for Windows and stuff like that.
Okay.
This will be the main driver for billions of people to really use crypto. This, and of course, the abstraction of the difficulties of using it, right? So maybe AI will help a developer to find these killer projects on a blockchain, right? This is also a path that I can see in the next years in crypto. And I think this is almost a necessity. What do you guys think about it?
Absolutely, and you mentioned correctly, right? So far, the killer DApp or the killer use case that we have been able to deploy is stable coins, to be honest, right? And unlocking the computational scalability and the data scalability, we are removing the barriers for these new use case comes, and finally we find something meaningful beyond stable coins. And Jaime mentioned about gaming. We are very interested in gaming as well, because traditionally game industry is a huge disruptor, right? It was the game industry that transformed all computers and laptops that we have here in powerhouses, right? If it was only to use Excel and docs, your computer would be much more like an early 95 or 98 computer. Right? It was the games that push video cards, sound cards, memory, and etc. that boost the capacity of the personal computers and then pave the way for mobile computers, right? So in that way, I would say that we will continue seeing gaming as a vertical that will show a lot of and squeeze a lot of value on the blockchain. Together with that, we cannot ignore the huge transformation that we are having here in Brazil with the central bank enabling the DREX. Brazil is becoming the world's laboratory on how blockchain can enhance finance system in the mainstream. It's very unique what is happening in Brazil. All the projects are coming to Brazil to use Brazil as a huge sandbox to later on export that. So and what will come behind that is a ton of innovation on how I use AI to create risk assessment models, but fully verifiable ones that I don't need to trust, right? And how that can compose with lending protocols, with IoT sensors that are delivering fully verifiable data to take decisions on if I promote a lending or not, a credit risk. So there's so many things that will fit together and bring up a new structure of the banking 3.0 that we're seeing, and I'm super excited what's happening there. And for all of that to be possible, we need a programming environment that allows you to play with different program languages on fetching the data and really work on the data. A blockchain or scalable blockchain that can allow you to have compelling computation and data capability, right? So that's why once all this infrastructure is settled in a convenient way for developers, and with the friendly framework that we have here in Brazil, then we're going to see a lot of those innovations coming, and finally applications that solves real people's life problems, and behind the hood, under the hood, something that they don't need to care about it, right?
Perfect. So we're almost at the end. So in order to finish in a funny way, I'd like to ask you guys a nice question. In how many times do you think that my grandma, or at least your grandma, will be using, at least indirectly, blockchain for something, anything at all, a game, DeFi application, or anything that you want? I personally think it will take something like 10 years from now. What do you guys think?
1 year. Yeah, I think, and I want to add something to that.
I don't know my grandma.
Like we might see in the US, in all these developed countries, they develop the cool tools, but how to use it, how to take them to the real world, that's what we are going to see in Latin America. That's why I'm really bullish on the region.
Yeah. I will start answering a question with, right now, if my grandmother used Web3, she'll be most probably rugged, right? That is a more innovation, not in the developer side, but in the end user side. And I would say that ZK technology is progressing so fast. There's a lot of, I would say, projects offering sign in and creating wallet with your Gmail account. So it's starting to be very interesting and easy to onboard users. I would say that's it's closer to 1 year than 10, right? But there's still some bumpy roads to polish, some roadblocks, but it's coming soon, I would say.
I loved your optimism, guys. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Obrigado.